If you watch golf YouTubers, you know who Rick Shiels is. And we've seen him struggle time and time again this season in his Break 75 challenge. You know before the episode starts that Rick Shiels, 90% of the time, will not break 75. In his last episode, he shot an 89. I've watched Rick for many years, watched his product reviews, and unfortunately, watched his swing instruction videos. It is my contention that Rick Shiels has destroyed at least 1 million golf swings out there with his golf instruction, and I have the metrics to prove it. In his last season of Break 75, he came up with an episode where he shows his handicap, and after all the computing is done, he says he's a +2. This season, it's just tons of shanked short irons, drives all over the place, and the guy is a worse chipper and pitcher of the golf ball than I am. In the most delusional title I've ever seen on a golf video, his new episode is I am going to get good at golf, or I am getting good at golf. So he's got a whole new series. And the reason he's bad at golf is that his instruction is horrible. And you can watch from this episode that Dan Whitaker is actually changing Rick Shiels' swing in the same manner that my instructor, John Horschman at the Butch Harmon School of Golf, changed my swing. So I know exactly what he's going through. Let's get into this episode. Special thanks to John and Kristen Munno for the Live swag. My favorite color. Rick then comes out with another clickbaity titled video, Time to Quit, and he explains to us something that we all know, and for anyone who watches the show knows, Rick is not good at golf. So Rick then says that he's putting his Break 75 series on hold. It really wasn't much of a series this year because he's playing a very famous golfer next month. I'm betting it's Rory McIlroy. So Rick goes back to his instructor, Dan Whitaker. And what you're about to see really makes me wonder about Rick's teaching credentials, because he's going to probably a more modern style golf instructor, whereas Rick has been teaching this 90s David Ledbetter junk. As the lesson starts, Dan puts this little wrist thing on Rick's wrist, and you know immediately the issue with Rick's swing is that he cups his left wrist rather than bowing it. It's killing his game, and it kills a lot of people's game. You can't really cup your left wrist if you're a right-handed golfer unless you're Ben Hogan or Freddie Couples. Think about nowadays. You got Dustin Johnson, Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, Victor Hovland. All these guys, top 10 in the world. Dustin Johnson should be there. Got to get him some official world golf ranking points. Not that I necessarily think that the OWGR is even relevant anymore, but let's get back to the point. This is a power position. Bowing your left wrist helps you shallow the club. What Rick Shiels does with his little cup maneuver makes him Mr. Flippy Hands through the golf ball. Dan Whitaker immediately recognizes this, tries to get a gizmo on Rick's left wrist to help him feel what he should be doing.
You get a lot of sort of cup halfway back, and then you flatten it to the top.
What Dan Whitaker says is that Rick Shiels gets a lot of cup in his left wrist halfway back and then flattens his wrist as he gets to the top. Let's look into what Rick Shiels teaches.
The one pointer I just want to talk about just in this first half of the backswing is how this golf club just needs to be slightly adjusted and slightly set by changing the wrist angle just a touch. And this is going to help so many golfers.
Rick Shiels spends the rest of his latest episode with Dan Whitaker doing the opposite of what he's teaching everyone to do here in terms of setting that left wrist early. And as you just heard, Dan Whitaker pointed this out as a swing flaw. So there's your million ruined swings. Also keep in mind that bad swing instruction has this vampire effect because it gets passed on to the next guy, the next guy, the next guy. So how many people's golf swings were ruined because of this instruction that Rick Shiels has put out that is horrible advice? Now, coming up, I'm going to take this first Rick Shiels cupping wrist advice and compare it to the effects of actually bowing the left wrist. So keep on watching.
First move into here, feel like that left wrist is going a bit more in that direction. Not as much as that, but obviously it's going to be flatter.
What we see Rick teaching is to set the wrist. He keeps saying it over and over again, set the wrist, but he's really just cupping the wrist. But in the lesson he takes, Dan Whitaker teaches him to bow the wrist, not cup it. That's the Rick Shiels set. I don't know why you would tell someone to set their wrist like this unless you wanted them to permanently suck at golf. As I'm making these swings, I am trying to actually bow my left wrist at the top. I'm looking at the swings right now. Doesn't look that bowed, but the intention is there. All golf swings are a work in progress, but you don't want to be trying to program this slightly cupped wrist halfway back on your backswing like Rick Shiels used to teach and now is, like myself, trying to actively get rid of any type of cuppage and go to pure bowage. Folks at home, try this on the range. Let me know if it helps you shallow your swing out, get your hands ahead of the ball through the impact. I hope your golf swing has been improved through this episode.